When you're driving one of these, chances are no one's going to just assume you're an and call you a.
Mechanically speaking, it's important to understand here that they sell millions of these in Japan. They're pretty much the automotive lifeblood of the nation. They have to be reliable.
These things, they attract, let's say, an abundance of flirtatious attention. Firstly, we need to say a massive thank you to our sponsor for this video, Idemitsu. More on that later. You might be seeing funky little trucks like these popping up all over the place and you're thinking, what the hell are these? Or maybe you need an ultra practical work vehicle that's as cost effective as possible and that you can park pretty much anywhere. Or maybe you're just about ready to buy a K truck, but you need to check the ultimate guide before you decide to pull the pin. Well, guess what? This is that ultimate guide, and we're going to answer so many questions about this category of vehicle, starting with what goes wrong with them and kicking off with the exteriors. Now, it's important to know that depending on where you're watching this from, there are so many different makes and models of K truck out there. When it comes to common exterior issues, some of them can be quite specific to the particular example that you're looking at. However, in saying that, when it comes to the more recent models like these two, not a whole lot goes wrong with the exteriors. However, when it comes to K trucks that are more than 25 years old, that can be a different story. They can suffer things like the plastics getting all really brittle and starting to break off, like things like door handles, through to rust issues. And we're talking everything from simple to fix surface rust through to life-ending levels of chassis rot. If you're looking at a K truck that is more than 25 years old, it is absolutely imperative that you go over the entire exterior as thoroughly as possible. Better yet, just get a full pre-purchase inspection carried out. But then on the flip side of that, when you're looking at newer models, it does seem like the levels of corrosion resistance have been far improved. So you'd like to think that rust shouldn't be an issue. Although some owners of Honda Actis have reported some rust and corrosion issues around the corners of the windscreen, although that is far from common. But look, like any used car, just make sure you inspect it thoroughly before you buy it. Now, there is a much bigger concern with these exteriors, but before we get to that, let's just decipher some of the critical to know information, like what the hell even are these? K trucks are small, lightweight commercial vehicles designed to meet Japanese K car regulations, and this means they are restricted in their physical size and engine capacity. And the reason for this is to ensure that they are affordable, fuel and space efficient, and easy to maneuver in busy and built up areas. And this also means that in their native country, Japan, some of their on-road costs are reduced as well, like taxes and registrations. And in general, they're incredibly light on their consumables like tyres and brakes, and they'll do wonders for your image, but more on that in a second. And this is why K trucks are so incredibly popular in Japan, and that's why there are just so many models. Most common in Australia are these two, the Daihatsu Hijet and the Suzuki Carry, but depending on your location, the Subaru Sambar, Honda Acti, Mazda Scrum and Mitsubishi Minicab could be available in all different models, trim specs and configurations. For example, some engines are turbocharged and some aren't. Most will be full drive, but rear wheel drive is also often available. Some will have a manual transmission, others will be an auto. Some are normal cabs and others are extended cabs. Even where the engine is located can vary between the models. For example, early Subaru Sambars had their engines located behind the rear wheels. Although these days they're just a rebadged Daihatsu Hijet, so the engine is just behind the front wheels instead. Now, just on who makes what, did you notice that I didn't mention Toyota when running through that list of K trucks? That's because Toyota, they don't make a K truck, and that's because they own Daihatsu, so why would they make a vehicle to compete with themselves? Anyway, back to that bigger concern with the exteriors. These are a Japanese import, so let's say you damage a headlight or need a new body panel or a new front bar. What happens then? See, the problem here is that you can't just pop down to your local dealership or parts store and pick up a spare part, because chances are these spare parts, they're going to have to come from Japan, and that can be less than convenient. Even when it comes to consumables like tyres, you could be really limited for choice, unless you just pop down to Bunnings and steal some off a wheelbarrow.
K-Truck tyres are not sold at Bunnings.
However, with these becoming more and more popular, the really good importers out there, like Colton Classic that have lent us these two, are starting to bring more parts in, and they can help you source and ship parts in from Japan. And just on the subject of good importers, this does raise another really big concern. Unfortunately, there are some really dodgy operators out there. We've heard stories of documentation being falsified, odometers being tampered with or even wound back, cars turning up that are not the car that was promised in the first place. honestly, do as much homework on who you're buying the car off as the actual car itself. At the very least, just make sure the car comes with an auction report, an export certificate, and a compliance plate, and just make sure all of those details match. Also, there is a huge aftermarket scene for these things, to the point that if you need to fix something or you want to modify it, there is a wealth of resources out there. The owners groups should be your first stop. Actually, we joined a whole bunch of owners groups and forums to research this video. And what a fantastic bunch of people. The resources and advice they can give you are just priceless. Now, something else you need to be really aware of is, and look, this is going to depend on where you're living and your circumstance and which actual K truck you're looking at buying, but plenty of owners mentioned to us that some of the insurance costs can be on the premium side. Now look, hopefully this will improve as more of these are imported and importers like Colton Classic bring more spare parts in, but just do your homework and go shopping for the best possible insurance. Now remember before how I said these things can do absolute wonders for your image? Well, nothing screams to the world that you're not compensating for a lack of self-esteem or maybe, let's say, physical appendage, like driving a tiny vehicle. Like, let's be honest, these things, they just exude fun, but at the same time, because they are fundamentally commercial vehicles, also a bit of a sense of dependability. Also, unlike driving a Raptor or a modified Hilux or whatever big four-wheel drive dual cab ute, when you're driving one of these, chances are no one's gonna just assume you're an asshole and call you a wanker. You know it's true. Now inside, you might be thinking, that guy looks like he's exactly 188 centimeters tall. There's no way he's going to comfortably fit inside either of those two K trucks. Well, you know what? You're exactly right and exactly wrong, because I am and I do. Now look, we'll get into what these interiors are like to live with in a second. First of all, what commonly goes wrong? Well, not much, because there's not actually much to go wrong. Actually, one of the big complaints that we came across time and time again was just surrounding the lack of stuff that you get, although this can vary depending on the example you're looking at. For example, many on the used market, like this Carry, they just have the absolute bare essentials. Yes, there's a stereo, but the speakers are absolutely terrible, and I don't think this one even has Bluetooth. Some don't even have air conditioning, but this one does. However, others like this Hijet, they have power windows, push button start, parking sensors, and more. Actually, others might even come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, or they'll come like this one and just have a space for you to fit whatever levels of technology that you want. Actually, you can approach these interiors almost like a blank canvas. Whatever feature or piece of technology you want, you can fit it easily with aftermarket equipment. But aside from the complaints about the lack of stuff that you get, look, you might come across the occasional report of a button or a switch not working properly, or maybe the air conditioning being a little bit on the weak side, but even those complaints, they're so few and far between. Now, with both the Carry and the Hijet being work trucks, understandably, pretty much everything short of the seats are made of a very hard plastic, because these things are designed to be resilient. And according to the owners, yeah, these interiors are incredibly resilient. But the thing that might surprise you are the overall ergonomics in here. And this is across the entire K truck range. Look, yeah, obviously it does feel like a really small cabin. I can touch the other side of the truck just here with an arm's length. But like, there's a decent amount of leg room, the actual seat comfort. I know these things, you know, they prioritize getting in and out easily and being resilient, but they're actually not that uncomfortable. I'm surprised at how well I fit in here and how comfy it is. But in saying that, if you do go to a more recent example like the Hijet, this is genuinely really comfy. The seats are bloody nice. I could spend hours sitting in here. Even as far as the fit and finish and just the quality of materials, again, everything like the Carry, it's super hard plastic, but because of the textures they've used, it does feel a little bit more premium than what you're expecting. Even the height of the roof, I've got so much headroom. I swear to you, this is way, way comfier than you're expecting. And then in terms of practicality, like, this is a small vehicle, but how's this for a wonderful use of space? Here we go. You've got a tray up here. You've got a full bookshelf along here for as many phones as you want. You've got cup holder here, cup holder here, cup holder here. Got a spot for pens there, spot for phone just there. You've got a spot, this is specifically for collecting dust and life's crap just there. You've got door pockets, although they're really only good for things that have 2 dimensions. Depending on what size the cab is, you can have storage behind the seats, and sometimes they've even got tie-down straps. This one with the slightly higher roof even has an entire parcel shelf above the cab area. So much practicality. And then in the carry, you also get a bookshelf just here and also a cute little glove box. You've got a spot for your phone just there. You've got a spot for your phone and whatever else just there. There's another spot for your phone down here. 2 cup holders here. There's a spot for coins here, and those really rare big rectangular coins just there. Another spot for your phone just there. You've also got a cup holder, and the door bins, I don't know if they're 3-dimension door bins, but they're definitely verging on it. A spot for, I think, pens just here and more storage down here. Now, this is something that we found when we reviewed the Honda N-Box and the Suzuki Spacia. It's just such an intelligent use of space. And it makes you wonder why other manufacturers with much larger cars can't use space as intelligently like this. What are you guys doing? Get it right. Now, there is another really big concern with these things, and it's their levels of safety or lack thereof, especially with the earlier models. Now, in Australia, our legislation states that K-trucks need to be at least 25 years old or on what's called the SEVs list, or the Specialist and Enthusiast Vehicles list. And when it comes to safety, the K-trucks that are more than 25 years old, their safety is about equivalent to either base jumping or being one of those winged suit skydiving people. Honestly, YouTube some of the crash test footage because it's confronting to say the least. However, when it comes to the newer K-trucks like these ones, look, we're not going to state that they're, Volvo levels of safety ability, but they are a massive, massive improvement over the older ones. Depending on the model you're looking at, chances are it will have a couple of airbags, ABS, and maybe even low-speed automatic emergency braking. And look, yeah, okay, granted your knees do still make up some of the actual crash structure, but again, go and check out some of the crash test footage because it's actually not as confronting as you might think. Now, here's a fun fact for you. The trays in these things are actually larger than the trays you'll find in the back of a Toyota Hilux or a Ford Ranger. Seriously. Granted, the payload capacity with these, they top out at around about 350 kilos to 400 kilos, which cannot match a full-sized ute. But if you're lugging around big, kind of heavy things, rather than big, really heavy things, these will do the job. And then when it comes to towing capacity, look, there is a bit of hearsay online of what these things can tow. For us, we would not recommend towing anything above about 600 kilos. And look, regardless of the fact that these things generally weigh anywhere from 650 kilos to 850 kilos, if you start towing things that weigh more than the tow vehicle itself, you're just asking for trouble. Speaking of asking for trouble, next up, what are these things like to drive on Aussie roads? What are the major concerns? Well, the big one is K-trucks can't handle the hostile environment that is the freeway. So how about we find out if that's true? First of all, it is important to remember that our K-trucks don't have a whole lot of power, but also they don't have a whole lot of weight. Now, this doesn't necessarily equate to a fantastic power to weight ratio, but you feel involved in the process. Okay, if you were to measure these acceleration times, it would show you that these are not a fast vehicle. But I tell you what, because the future is rushing towards you, right, like it's just there, centimeters in front of you, I'm actually really glad this isn't happening any faster than what it is. It gives your brain time to just comprehend the sheer amount of information being thrown at you. Also, you want to hope, or more accurately, pray that there are no crosswinds the day you're driving this at 110 because it's so small and it's so light, it just so easily gets buffeted around, and that is also quite terrifying. Okay, so we're now doing, oh my God, this is terrifying. We're now doing 110, pulling in behind a truck. And what is this like? Imagine doing 110 behind a truck, but sitting on the front edge of the bonnet of your car. That's what it's like. Oh, come on, here we go. Overtaking trucks. Come on. No, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. It's okay. We don't need to overtake trucks. Not important. Look, I love exciting experiences, especially when driving, but I'll be honest, this is a little bit on the terrifying side. Look, overall on the freeway, they can hum along at 110, but they're revving their pants off and in the process probably deafening you as well, as you can probably hear. So how about we swap into the carry and drive that in more of its comfort zone, which is below 80 kilometers an hour. This is not that enjoyable, really. Now, around town, these things absolutely shine. The turning circle is amazing, so maneuvering into the tightest situations is an absolute breeze. Plus, because it's so small, you can almost invent parking spots. Now the ride, look, it is on the bouncy side and Aussie roads don't do much to help that, but you know what? It's nowhere near as bad as you might think. But the big feeling you get when driving this, and honestly it distracts you from any negatives, is just how much fun it is to drive. And not just for the person driving it, but also for everyone out there. And also, if you're let's say a single man watching this and you're after a car that will assist in your love life, forget jacked up four-wheel drives, forget performance cars or even supercars, get one of these. Seriously, and this is a common occurrence. We've spoken to owners about it. These things, and actually Suzuki Jimneys, they attract, let's say, an abundance of flirtatious attention. Not that you'll notice it though, because your brain is just going to be preoccupied with how much fun these are to drive. You know what a K-Truck is like to drive? It's like the automotive equivalent of what all those self-help gurus constantly go on with. You know, don't focus on the destination, focus on the journey. And the journey is hilarious in a K-Truck, as long as you don't crash it. But unfortunately, there is another big concern when it comes to K-Trucks, and it's what can mechanically go wrong? Well, unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Now, mechanically, there is no one big common issue here that causes catastrophic failures. They are all very reliable. And when I say all, I mean every brand. They're all really good. And most of the ones we see imported into Australia have relatively low mileage, so you're not really going to expect issues there. If you're looking to buy one, a good service history is important. Now, sometimes this service history can be a little bit hit and miss, and sometimes also written in Japanese, so that can be problematic too. Now, as good as Google Translate and AI is, look, if it's handwritten, it is going to be difficult to work out what's going on there. So it's important to look for servicing clues here. Give all the radiator hoses a nice squeeze. You want to make sure they're nice and sort of soft and not crusty. If they're crusty, that indicates there's some corrosion and build up inside the cooling system. And look at the coolant. You want to make sure it is nice and fresh as well. Have a look at the oil, pull the dipstick, make sure the oil looks relatively clean, and wipe it off and have a look at the actual dipstick itself. Make sure it's not stained from carbon, which could indicate, you know, poor service history and burnt oil and things. Make sure it wipes off nice and clean. Pull off the oil cap and just have a look inside there. Look for any signs of excessive moisture. Sometimes you can see a little bit of milky residue. That's actually usually not so bad. Make sure it hasn't got a large buildup of dirty, crusty carbon and oil and crap. If it looks pretty clean, you're good to go. In terms of parts failing, look, yeah, occasionally a water pump or ignition coil. That happens to all vehicles, but there's really no standouts here. Now, if you need any of those parts, now that's what I'd call wear and tear parts. They are actually very easy to get online these days, and quite cheap usually too. Sometimes bigger mechanical parts can be a bit hard to find, but usually not much goes wrong anyway. Usually those parts are available ex-Japan, and it might take a bit of searching, but yeah, usually no problem to get. Now, sometimes those parts, even though they're coming from Japan, you can actually get them quicker than some dealerships can buy parts to repair your car that's under warranty. Now, if it's an older truck or a superseded model, those parts can be a bit hard to find. Personally, I think some of the older ones are super cool and totally worth getting. If you're having trouble finding parts, there are plenty of owners groups and Facebook groups that they can nearly always find what you're looking for. Now, back to our sponsor for today's video, Idemitsu. For those of you watching from Australia, you might not yet be familiar with Idemitsu. As Japan's leading producer of motor oil, Idemitsu has been at the forefront of oil technology for over 100 years. And while Idemitsu might not be a household name here, there's a strong possibility you've already used their oil in your car without knowing it. Idemitsu has long supplied OEM engine oil for major Japanese automakers. We're talking brands such as Toyota, Mazda, Mitsubishi and Honda. And fun fact, if you've bought a Toyota in the last 30 years, it's likely to have started its life running on Idemitsu oil. And now you have the opportunity to use the same high quality oil in your vehicle. And that means enjoying the benefits of their 100-year dedication to crafting the finest oil. The IFG3 offers balanced anti-wear protection, ideal for city driving. The IFG5 enhances responsiveness and durability, while the flagship IFG7, featuring Septet Guard technology, delivers comprehensive benefits including maximum protection and consistent horsepower and acceleration. Click the link below and check out the range today.
Okay, so after all of that, should you buy one of these? Well, look, obviously they're not for everyone, but I tell you what, everyone, at least once in their lives, should drive a K-Truck, because really any exposure to vehicles like these, they're just going to make you happier. Although, look, it's not all sake and ramen. We'd be extremely hesitant buying a 25-year-old K-Truck unless it really is the only vehicle that fulfills your specific requirements. Look, we understand they are impossibly cool and they're outrageously fun to drive. But we're just concerned about the levels of safety, the potential rust issues, the challenge in getting certain spare parts. We just think they're really only for the very committed. However, when it comes to the more recent examples, like these two, as long as you've done all of your due diligence and the K-truck in question ticks all of the boxes, and you're happy to increase your levels of cool tenfold, absolutely you should buy one. But the frustrating thing is, it does seem that many people living in built-up cities are becoming more obsessed with buying big trucks and utes, even though they have no intention of using them for what they're designed for. Chances are, a K-truck will give them all the practicality they need, they're more fuel efficient, they take up less space, they're lighter on the consumables, they're easier to drive, they're better for everyone, and most importantly, these are just so much cooler. Buy one of these instead. However, if you do want to buy potentially the absolute polar opposite to one of these, check out one of these instead. But if you went to buy this or these, what would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Now here's a fun fact. If you're looking at a K-truck that is more than 25 years old, it is absolutely... They're just so much cooler. Buy one of these instead. Ow.